From boardroom meetings to bedtime stories, Coffee in the Barn explores the delicate dance of balancing the demands of our professional lives with the joys and responsibilities of being moms. Join us each week as we discuss the latest trends in agribusiness, share insightful interviews with industry experts, and sprinkle in some heartfelt anecdotes about the humorous and heartwarming moments that come with being a working mom in agriculture. Welcome back to Coffee in the Barn with Casey and Morgan. We have a special guest today with us, Mariana Menegat, who is a swine nutritionist with Holden Farms. I have the pleasure of working with her husband at Hubbard Feeds. But today, Mariana is going to help kind of explain phase feeding and how we feed pigs and animals in general, and how we formulate diets for animals based on stages of production and specific key features of each phase. And so with that, Mariana, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on. I think this is a very interesting topic, and pretty much that's how you start as a nutritionist, right? Figuring out how many diets you're going to feed and what they're going to look like. And phase feeding is basically how we manage the feeding program to feed pigs and meet their needs in terms of nutrient requirements um, along their lives in their stages of production, right? So I'm happy to talk about that.
Yeah, so could you just kind of highlight for those that aren't necessarily in agriculture, what does phase feeding mean?
So basically, when we think about the pig is growing, so their needs are changing, right? So we have to formulate the diets and come up with a feeding program that would kind of meet their needs as they keep growing. One of the main things that change as pigs grow is their feed intake or the consumption of feed. So right after they're weaned, they are eating very little, like a quarter of a pound, half a pound per day. And by the time they reach market weight, they're eating over 7 pounds. So in this 6 months of life, they basically increase their consumption by 20 or 30 folds, which is impressive. So what we can do in our formulation is to feed them in phases where we can decrease our nutrient density, energy density of the diet because they are making up with consumption, right? They still are getting what they need, but they are making it up on consumption. And that's not very different than thinking about babies and kids. So when we have a baby, we try to pack as much nutrient, as much energy in like one spoonful, one bite, one bottle, because that's all they're going to eat. But as they keep growing, they keep eating more, so we can decrease that density of the diet because they're going to make up for it when they eat more times and more volume of feed, right? It's the same principle. So that's one thing that changes is the amount of feed that the animals are eating. But the other thing that changes is their preferences. So we can change the ingredients as they grow based on their preferences. So when the pig is really young, they are gonna have a preference for milk, right? Because that's where they've been. They've been with their sows for 21 to 28 days, and their guts are ready to use milk proteins and lactose. When we wean them from the sow and we start giving them food, we have to use a high milk density diet so they can have the taste of milk, but also all the highly digestible ingredients that are based on the milk diet, right? And then as they keep growing, then their taste preference will change because also their enzymes are changing. So we can move them into a corn soy diet, which is a simpler diet that would be the vast majority of our pigs are on a corn soybean meal diet in the US. That is not very different from us. So when we are kids, we have taste buds that have kind of like an appetite. They're more aligned to sweet taste and not very much for bitter taste. That's why like a kid can eat like a bucket full of cotton candy, but not one slice of grapefruit. And it's vice versa for us adults. Like cannot handle that much cotton candy, but I can handle a bucket of coffee for sure. So it's our preference that changes over time because we are changing as we grow. Another good example is just the cereal aisle. If you go to the cereal aisle, you can see children's cereal and adult cereal. So children's cereal is just full of sugar, energy, color, and adult cereal is whole grains and nuts and fiber and low calorie because our taste preference change, but also our needs change. And that's exactly the same for the pigs.
That's awesome. I was gonna say, has either one of you ever tasted sow's milk?
Sow's milk? I've tasted my own milk.
I don't think so.
It's not
I
very
milked
sweet.
a lot of sows
Yeah.
in the past for research, but maybe not voluntarily.
Oh, I guess you did work with the same people I did. Double dare you to taste it. I'm like, okay. I'm like, ugh, not my favorite, but just
But
a fun
even
note to include.
even human like breast milk is not as sweet as I would have initially thought it would have been.
Interesting.
It's very I don't want to say it's very bland, but it has a distinct taste to it.
And I would say, because you mentioned taste a lot, and I think the new technologies were even taking that flavor mask or that flavor profile from milk, and I think Land O'Lakes has done that. They have made feed additives to mimic that mother's milk taste
Huh. That's interesting.
to help
Mm.
for intake later on. And I think the mistakes we make, I see in human nutrition, is that we don't change the calorie density of our diets soon enough for our children. And I would say it's not my opinion, but it's a fact that, the US children's obesity rate is just skyrocketing, and you can see it on the store shelves that parents go for the easier meals and they don't realize the calorie differences or the types of nutrients. And that's something else we also have to talk about in nutrition from a phase feeding is calories come in the form of protein, fat, sugar as well. And so understanding that dynamic is really important in our industry.
Yeah, that is true. And that's something like you said, we can formulate the diet so many different ways because we just have, the constraints and the things that we want to achieve, but then the mix of ingredients that we have available can make up for a completely different formula if I'm doing or you guys are doing it, right? And same with our kids, I guess. You can, yeah, give them exactly the same amount of nutrients, but in very different ways.
Yeah, I think texture of food plays into that quite well. Can you speak, I know especially on the swine and animal agriculture side of things, we can do a lot of different things to the texture of feed to help animals eat it. Can you highlight a little bit more on how we do that and why we do that?
Yeah, that's interesting because I think it also goes back to the nature of the pigs. They are very curious animals, especially when they're young. I think after they are older, they might not care so much about the textures, but yeah, we can have, a meal diet, a pelleted diet, or a crumble diet that will also, it's it helps us deliver the nutrients and ingredients that we want, but it also have a component that the pigs just find it more enticing. And the pig's curiosity is just exploring, the new things. Um, if you put in a toy, they're gonna play. If in They might try different foods just because it looks or tastes or smells different, right? And one thing that in my goal with your team is that I really think it's interesting how pigs can be picky eaters when they're young, just like the kids. So we put them in the nursery after they're weaned. They look at the feed in the feeder, not gonna have it. So they don't think it's interesting. They don't want to share with their pen mates, just like they don't want to share with siblings. And then we get the food, and then we put it in a feeding mat, we put it into the Red Bull, and ta-da! Then they start eating. Because it is a different way of presenting the same food in just a different way, right? So they think that is different, it's enticing. And that's the same as we do with our kids. Like if we put their veggies in a colorful new cup, they might eat it compared to having the same veggies in their old boring regular plate, right?
Oh, the
And so
same with
pigs kind
dinosaur
of do the
chicken
same.
nuggets, right? It's a chicken
Right.
nugget, but
Yes.
It's the
I'll eat it
same.
because it's a dinosaur.
Exactly. So I think that is part of the young pig's curiosity and they want to explore, I guess.
Yeah, I think I experienced that same exact thing uh with my son and my daughter too, is, as they transition from breast milk to then you start introducing solid foods, usually you do purees because
Mhm.
they don't necessarily have any teeth yet, or they're just exploring the different textures of foods. But when you puree everything kind of has the same texture. Well, as soon as we transitioned to purees for both my kids, we only fed purees for maybe a couple months because then we started giving them, smaller table pieces and whatnot. And once they figured out all the different textures and components of like actual real food and not purees, my son won't even touch purees anymore.
Interesting.
Yeah,
That
Arthur's
is
not a big
so
applesauce
interesting.
fan either anymore.
Not even applesauce. Oh, I thought that was always going to
Gotta be
be a
chunky
big thing.
applesauce. But I think that sweetness too, like I've tried making, incorporating as many veggies as I can into a smoothie for my 3-year-old who doesn't like to eat vegetables. And she can taste it. If there's not enough apple juice or sugar or something in that smoothie that has a lot of veggies to offset that kind of bland veggie taste, she will not drink it.
Oh, that's amazing. How can they pick it? That's amazing. Oh, and that was one of the pros of having the puree because you can put it in, right?
Yes.
And they go through a phase that they just want to have exactly the same thing because it's comfortable, right? They just want to see the same texture. The taste can vary, but just something that they can trust. And that's why sometimes it's easier for parents to just get something from the store because it will always taste the same, it will always look the same, so you know they're gonna eat it. But we still have to keep giving them all the different textures and flavors and exposure. If they don't want to eat, at least they've seen it, right?
Hmm. I think that's a good segue into, and I think you've highlighted a little bit on it, but how has your thought process as being a swine nutrition and as a mom, the philosophies that you implement in swine nutrition, how have you incorporated those philosophies into feeding your kids or feeding yourselves, or how have those kind of changed and shifted?
Oh, that's a good question. It's interesting because maybe we do some of those things without really realizing. But definitely after learning about nutrition, going through my PhD, I really started just paying more attention of what is making up for this food. Can we find the same thing but with more protein and less sugar? I think those are the main things that I keep looking at, every time that I'm trying to give him what he needs. Is it really nutritious? Protein would be the number one thing. And then if we can reduce sugar and salt, that would be the preference too. Um, yeah, I think giving him exposure to different texture, flavors, a variety of things, and having him make the decision of what he wants to eat, considering what we have available and not what's in the pantry, right? What we have
Yeah.
in the table. Like, do you want to eat this or that we just prepared? It's one of the things that we try to do. Um, yeah, not sure what else I have been using from the pig roll into Oliver's.
Did you breastfeed or formula feed?
I breastfed him. Yes, we were very lucky that I didn't have to make the transition from my milk to formula and then to cow's milk. So we went straight from after he weaned and stopped nursing to have regular cow's milk. But that would definitely be some of the concepts that we were talking about, or like the nutrient density. We would probably see that in the formula, that the formulas change because that also changes how much energy we're going to have in the diet and all the different components of protein and until you get to cow's milk, basically.
No, that's great because there's always that debate that you have to, breastfeed or you're not a good mom in the mom world. And it's whatever works for you because we know on the human side we have amazing nutritionists as well formulating formula for our kids and our foods. But I think the biggest thing I'm blessed with, I didn't ever have a picky eater. But I think that goes back to what you said of exposing him at an early age to lots of different foods, textures, flavors.
Yeah, that's what we try to do, and we don't have a picky eater at home too, but it could be a variety of things. Like he may be just very hungry. He eats very well.
Or they just want to eat French fries and chicken nuggets, or we didn't necessarily have that, but Emma would want just a peanut butter and jelly sandwich for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. She'd have a peanut butter jelly sandwich 2 or 3 times a day, like multiple days in a row. And I was like, okay, there's worse things you could be eating, but whatever, you'll eat it.
Yeah,
sometimes it's just making sure that they eat something.
Exactly. And that's not going to last forever. So you just have to have that mindset that, okay, that's what you need now. Let's go through this together. And yeah, she's not going to do that forever. So that's one way of keeping you sane too. Because if you're, and that kind of lines up with our swine production. Sometimes you want things to be perfect. I can sit in front of my formulator and the perfect diet will come up. And then I get to the feed mill and nope, not really. We don't have this. We cannot make that. This is not going to go through our pellet mill or whatever. And then you have to go back and rethink, well, what's my plan B then? And that's kind of how it goes with kids. You think you're gonna have all this elaborate meal plan, and nope, not really, not having this, and then you go to plan B.
They eat the same 5 things every single day. And I think one, I don't know if this happens with pigs, it might, but I didn't realize how hangry kids get when, even if they've just eaten like an hour ago, especially for like young kids under 5 who are just, they don't stop. They just run and play all day long. Is that I'm like, you just ate an hour ago. How can you be hungry again? And sometimes I've learned over the process, potty training specifically taught me this, is that the dysregulation that they have within their body, they can't tell you what's wrong. So usually it's via outbursts of crying, or they can't make decisions or something. When they're not happy, they're projecting that, and it's actually some sort of dysfunction. Specifically, when we were potty training our 3-year-old, is she didn't necessarily know how to tell us that she needed to go to the bathroom, but we were able to recognize that when she started getting super ornery or upset or not being able to make decisions, that was her body telling us that she had some sort of dysregulation and that she needed to actually go to the bathroom. And so that helped us. Once we recognized that, we were like, okay, let's go put you on the potty. We'll go. And then, she eventually grew out of that and knows to go on her own now. But I think you can translate that to feeding your kid too, because sometimes they don't necessarily know that their stomach pains might be hungry, or that they're sick, or that they have to go to the bathroom. And we had that the other day where she was just complaining that she had a bellyache and wasn't feeling good. And I was like, let's try eating something. And then 30 minutes after she was done eating, her complete attitude flipped around.
That's amazing.
But you talk about that, how to see it in pigs. Navel sucking is a great example of that. They're hungry, but yet they're not smart enough to know that I can only get milk from my mom's underline versus my neighbor's. And I was gonna say, I've seen a lot of hangry sows,
Yeah.
grumpy.
You can see some of
yes.
the behaviors. Yeah.
But I think, we talked about young kids because we're there, but phase feeding, Mariana, we go into also sows and
Yeah.
boars.
Yeah.
That totally changes. It depending
Yes.
on pregnancy or not, or lactation. When we literally, pigs think the term pig is because they'll just eat anything and they'll eat a lot. And to me, that's a nursing sow with 14 piglets
Mhm.
that, they'll eat up to 20 some pounds. And I'm just like, I had one. I couldn't imagine having 14
It's a lot.
wanting to eat. And then not only that, they want to eat every hour. And so, yes, we do have hangry moms in the pig world too.
Yes,
Yeah.
and how your diets change from not even just your diet, but like you're super hungry at your beginning of your pregnancy, and then things kind of taper off a little bit, and then you have the baby, and then you start nursing, and then it's like your appetite is almost as much as it was when you first found out you were pregnant because you have the supply and demand.
Yes. Yeah, I can see a lot of similarities. Even, well, when we start the feeding program for sows and guild, we start with a vitamin boost, right? We give them a vitamin supplement just like our doctor would recommend for when we're expecting, to make sure they have a healthy pregnancy. How we control their weight gain too during pregnancy. We want to make sure they have all the nutrients, but not gain a lot of weight during pregnancy, because that could have an impact on sow's delivery and also just their overall health during pregnancy. And after they deliver, then yes, that's nutrient packed food. And that's kind of what some of the Asian cultures would do too, very rich recovery type foods that we don't have it as much here, or not my culture at least. But some friends would have a lot of that in Asian cultures. That let's make it very rich, very kind of a healing type of diet after you have your baby. And that's what we try to do with sows. Just let them have as much food as they want, a lot of energy, a lot of protein, and let them milk and recover.
Pigs are monogastric, similar to cats and dogs. Are you familiar, or could you explain a little bit how we phase feed for those type of companion animals and
We phase
adjust?
feed and regulate amounts.
Yeah, I thought a little bit about how we feed our pets, right? That's the experience that most people would have, other than feeding themselves and their kids. Is like, how am I feeding my dog or my cat or any pet that you have? And we have a dog, so Gigi is our dog, and I just remember kind of going through the same steps as we do with the pig. When she was little, we gave her puppy food because she was very little. She was growing very fast, and she needed like the small bite full of energy and protein. And then now that she's 4 years old, she's on adult food because we want to control her weight gain, control their stool consistency, their coat, and other things that we might want for the dog. But that's the three main ones that we want for Gigi. And she will be on the adult food until she probably goes to like a senior dog food type. That would be for whatever needs that she might have, but it's usually for like bone strength, or if she has needs for like heart health or kidneys health, then you have diets tailored for those needs. And I think that's very similar to what we would do in a pig's lifetime, just kind of go from more nutrient dense diet to a diet to control weight, and also in restricted amounts, right? We are not going to feed them as much as they want all day. We feed them twice a day or once a day. And once they get to a stage where they have different needs, sometimes, if you think about you have a dog that is having puppies, or other stages or conditions, then you have specific diets. And same for, let's say I have a hunting dog and Gigi is very mellow, very low energy. But what if she was a hunting dog? We would probably need to supplement her with something or give her extra food when we go out on hunting,
Yep.
right?
And I was going to say the biggest mistake in nutrition is usually the application of nutrition and, obesity in our pets, in our people, and myself is because I overindulge. Because I always say from a nutrition perspective, you can eat anything in moderation. And I think that is also something in our world that we have to think of how nutrition's applied.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And some breeds of dogs are very good reminders of that if you put a lot of food in front of them, they're going to eat it all. And cats can be like that sometimes, and then it's very hard for them to lose weight then, just like it is for us. And then you have to go through all those stages of, exercise and restrict intake, and nobody's happy about that, right?
Nope, not at all. I feel like I'm on a constant diet, but my diet changes when being on a good diet or a bad diet is more like it.
Yeah. And that's kind of what we tried to do with pigs by providing them something that it's constant, it's the same, but they know what to expect every day, and they know that's going to make them healthier, right? We're trying to keep them on a healthier stage.
So on the agricultural side, we do the phase feeding, specific nutrients for that stage of production or gestating, lactating sow. But we make one feed for that pig to eat all day long, every single day, while they're in that phase. If you could only design one diet for yourself, for Oliver, whoever, what would that look like?
Oh, that's interesting. So one thing that we would all eat as a
one
family.
meal every single day. One
Every
meal
single
that you'd
day.
have to eat every single day.
That's a good one. I think it would have to be a pasta dish. I'm not sure exactly which one, but definitely a pasta dish with like veggies and meat. I don't know, maybe like mushrooms or shrimp, something like that. But definitely a pasta dish. It would make everyone happy here at home.
Casey, what about you?
It's pizza,
Pizza
because
is a good one.
I mean, that goes with pasta, and you can switch the pasta out for pizza. Tomato sauces, I'm getting my fruit in, and I get my veggies and my dairy. I get my whole grain if I pick the right pizza, right?
Yep, I would agree along those lines. And I think another food in our house that I think we eat a lot is tacos. You can have a variety of different proteins. You have your cheese, tomatoes, veggies, salsa, all sort of different things. You have some variety, but I think that's something in our house that we would be able to eat. Yeah. Thank you very much for joining us today. Normally, we leave our audience with an action item, a thought-provoking comment, or an action for them to just kind of think about. And so this week, I think our conversation on how we feed animals and the different preferences that humans, animals, kids all have, I think as humans, we might be a little bit more in tune on this as our taste buds develop and whatnot, but your body kind of can tell you what it's lacking or what it needs. Sometimes you're craving salts, or sometimes you're craving sweets. Are you in tune with your body enough to recognize those signs that you can pay attention and kind of listen to what your body needs? So that's our action item. Listen to your body. Can you recognize those signs and what your body's trying to tell you? Yeah. Does anybody have anything else to add?
That's
sometimes,
really
good. Sometimes you do need that bowl of ice cream, so eat it.
Or that bag of chips.
Well, thank you so much. This was fun.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it, and I had a lot of fun.
Hope you have a good rest of your week. And thanks everyone for listening. Tune in next week.